All right, so we're going to move back here to South Africa, and at BizTrends, we heeded the call for representation very, very seriously. Our next speaker, Luzuko Tena, is the newly appointed head of IAB South Africa. That's the Interactive Advertising Bureau of South Africa's Youth Action Council. He's also paid social executive at a global edu-tech company, Get Smarter, and he also serves on the IAB Manco as well. So we've moved from Africa, we've talked about Gen Z, and I think we're going to continue that thread of a conversation. So to tell us what the future of Gen Z leadership should look like, please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, our next BizTrend speaker, Luzuko Tena. Luzuko, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dion, for the introduction, as well as Tunde for a wonderful presentation, which I think not only myself, but certainly the group that I sort of represent and speak on behalf of definitely resonate towards. Now, after doing this for some time, it's still a little strange, I'll admit, presenting to an online crowd. Now, generally in person, I'd start off with a light story and how the live crowd reacts, hopefully with a laugh or two, either helps to take away the nerves completely, or in the worst case, they shoot up. Now, today I can't see your faces, neither can I hear your voices. But if I say something and smile or laugh afterwards, to make it less awkward for myself, but also you too, I'll imagine that all of you on the other side are laughing and smiling with me. Do we have a deal? Now, as Dion has mentioned, my name is Luzuko Tena, and today I'll be speaking mainly about the youth, what we bring as leaders, but also what we expect from leaders too. All of this was centered around the general theme of transformation, where certainly the narrative with regards to who's in charge of it and making it happen has shifted. Now, before getting into everything, I'd like to highlight these words, which I came across a few weeks ago when watching a documentary on Quincy Jones. And this is something his father used to repeat to him and his siblings when they were younger every day to pretty much get them through their days. And 80 plus years later, it's something he still lives by. Now, hopefully this helps in not only setting the tone for today, but also our relationship and how we think about transformation. So when I was approached to join the lineup for today, for a few days that followed the briefing I received, besides the fact that my mind was already on the slowed down and reflective state that comes at the end of the year, particularly one like 2020, I also couldn't stop thinking about George Orwell's Animal Farm. Now, for those of you who aren't too familiar with the book, essentially Animal Farm is a parable. Now, even though it is set on a farm and stars a cast of farm animals, it really reflects the events of the Russian Revolution of 1917. Now, after being fed up of their master and how they were treated, the animals plan a takeover, which results in their master being kicked off the farm, and the hope for an overall better future begins. Now, as with any society, in order for things to go in an orderly fashion and for there to be control, rules are needed. Now, the animals draft a list of 7 commandments, which takes into consideration all of them on the farm. They have regular meetings where all decisions are made on a group consensus, with the pigs, who are seen as the smarter ones on the plot, leading all of this. Fair, right? Now, power struggle begins amongst the pigs themselves, and really, to cut a very long story short, a group of them take over the farm, changing all the rules and their behaviors to a point where they end up with characteristics quite similar to the humans that they had previously kicked out. Now, these include, but are not limited to, walking upright on 2 legs, as well as drinking liquor. Now, defining change, however, is the all-encompassing 7th commandment, to one better suited for the pigs. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Now, transformation is a term popular across all sectors in South Africa, for various reasons, of course. And while there's been some progress made over the years, many may argue that ultimately it's also become a case of the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because as much as the faces of our industries are changing, particularly in leadership structures, much like the pigs on Animal Farm, behaviors of the past are still prevalent. So how do we change this? Well, before getting into that, I'd like to share a bit more on a group I'm part of and have the pleasure of leading, which is the IAB's Youth Action Council, a youth-led council which seeks to be all that we desperately seek in the industry as young people, from leaders to mentors, and most importantly, allies. Now, the Y Council is made up of 12 young industry leaders, between the ages of 24 and 30. We represent a range of companies and skills, but more importantly, underrepresented groups in leadership structures, with 60% of our group being women and 92% of it identifying themselves as either Black and or persons of color. Now, each seat in the council seeks to represent a function of the digital marketing ecosystem, from planning, account management, strategy, and creative, on agency and brand side. Now, as a council, our overall vision is to increase under 30s engagement and active participation in the industry. Now, this is obviously in line with the IAB's overall vision of empowering the media and marketing industries to thrive in the digital economy with a strong focus on education and transformation in South Africa. Now, as a team, we all share a common goal of wanting to see the youth within the industry matter and be given platforms to learn, shine, and grow every month in the year, not just in June. Now, this is why having this council means so much to us, because as much as we wanted a seat at the table, we also wanted our very own table. And fortunately, the IAB listened to our request. Now, with that, our role within the IAB and also the wider industry as young leaders can really be summed up in 3 words, which I'll elaborate on. And those are accountability, ownership, and assurance. Now, change is a very difficult thing to come about if there's no accountability. As a council, one of our things that we're responsible for is being that added layer of accountability within and for the IAB, as well as the various heads of member companies within the Bureau. Now, we also recognize as a group that as much as we're there to hold the top accountable, we're also going to be held accountable by our peers on how we use this platform, which we have. And this is why platforms of engagement continue to be such a big focus for us, because we truly are interested in how our peers feel, but also in what they experience. Now, one of the most important things with regards to diversity, inclusion, and transformation is ownership. Now, platforms such as our council are pointless if they're not done with the intent of giving some sort of ownership and a stake in a stake in the pie to the groups in question. Now, this is where the conversation of having a seat at the table versus having your own table comes in. Now, with this council, we've taken the approach of both, where we operate as a standalone and also sit in to collaborate with other councils and committees too. Now, this helps to kill the delaying notion, which sees us as the future of the industry and instead places us in the present time as leaders of now. Finally, assurance. Now, many assumptions are made on the ability of young people when it comes to being able to lead. One may even go as far as to argue that it's the reason as to why there's an unspoken tension between the older half of millennials and the younger ones. Now, in South Africa, a defining moment for millennials was undoubtedly the must fall period, which essentially saw young people stand up and fight for something they collectively, well, for the most part, believed in. Now, from all that transpired during this period, one thing worth noting was how the leadership there had the ability to perfectly balance calling out together with calling in. And with that, creating a space that allowed for people to not only introspect, but learn and unlearn, while also just showing general empathy towards one another. Now, as a council, this balance is very important to us too, because as much as we want to make a statement and we want to make a change, it's only possible through collaboration, understanding, and mutual respect between us as the council, the group we represent, and also those who walk the road we are on for much longer. Now, worry and the emotions that come with it are very natural things, and they are all part of the complexities that make us the beautiful beings that we are as humans. Now, at times, worrying often leads to a second guess, which helps us make good decisions. Other times, however, it's a stumbling block which comes as a result of us not embracing our various differences, which affects our overall progression. And if we're being quite honest, is probably why we've spent the last 10 or so years speaking about transformation instead of just doing it. Now what happens when we do embrace these differences? I think the following video, at least I believe, depicts just how easy this can be.
Yeah, I know. Every hue is so big that it's a little overwhelming. So I've reached out to my sorority sisters, the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha, for some extra set of hands. So Gabby to the rescue. So CBC is coming up. Do you have a notebook? Should you be writing this down?
Yes,
You
writing
are?
down right now.
This is a phone.
Yes. We don't do pen and paper no more.
You don't?
No.
Because normally you like have a notebook
No.
and then you can just turn the
Because
page.
you might accidentally leave your notebook, but you'll never leave your phone.
Oh, well, look at that. You're right. Okay, look at you young, smart people.
Apologies for the glitches, but I certainly hope that the point came across with that video for the part that you guys saw. Now, a big part of fully embracing differences in order to build diversity comes in how talent is recruited. Now, when these industries were found, I have no doubt that those who created them never imagined that society would be as diverse and integrated as it is right now. My reality is that the more the generational timeline moves, talent is taking shape in many forms, very different to what it originally was. A fun fact is that leaders are no longer just white and male. They also can be found in the various racial groups and genders, amongst many other things that exist in the society that we live in. This is a reality that we have to accept. Now, if I've had the privilege of going to traditional ad school, for example, it's very clear what I'm passionate about. And if I get an entry-level job that doesn't pay me well at all, I'm grateful to be working in the industry of my choice. Now, part of looking outside of the usual centers comes with understanding that people from there have other reasons for joining these industries other than passion. And so feelings towards the industries in general will be very different compared to the group that I mentioned first. Now, this is where the revered notion of culture fit comes in and how it's become such a defining factor in who gets a job from these two groups of people that I've just described. I, for one, am not a big fan of the term culture fit, as I think it does very little for diversity. Perhaps we should look at team fit rather. Who from this pool of talent can get the job done and also help us get to where we want to be as a company? Now, these three images are quite different, but I think tell quite a similar story in not only how important transforming with genuine intent is, but also the fact that it produces great results. Now, yes, it would be very naive of us to believe that the Springboks, the French men's soccer team, as well as Joe Public, are the infinity stones that we need to thin or snap ourselves out of the societal issues that we have. However, I think they paint a picture of a reality many may have thought was impossible, because sometimes you can only be what you know truly exists in the world. And there's no doubting that these images sure do stand as good examples of that. Now to close off, I'd like to leave you with the words of author John Shaw, which I think best describe the future of this industry. Oh, Dion. Oh, sorry about that. Dion popped up, but I'd like to leave you with the words of John Shaw, which, as I've mentioned, best describe the future of this industry. The future is not a place rather we are going, but one we are creating. The parts are not to be found, but made, and the activity of making them changes both the maker and the destination. Now, if there's going to be any change happening, it's up to us as the beneficiaries of these industries to make it happen. The ball is in our court, and ultimately, we're the ones who determine how and when it will happen. The job of transforming these industries into one that's not only truly representational of the society we live in, but also is a safe and welcoming enough space for those within it is a big task, one that we have no choice but to commit to doing. Now, doing this task well means being intentional in our approach, and more importantly, working collectively and not just relying on those that are underrepresented to do all the work. We can learn from one another, and I believe we have what it takes to make it happen. So as we move to this changing narrative and overall transformation, here's to more collaboration, holding each other accountable, embracing differences and change, all of this while achieving greatness and inspiring society as a whole to do so.
Luzuko, thank you very, very much. We lost your connection there, so that's why I just kind of popped onto screen there. And just after the video, we couldn't see any of your slides, but we could hear your melodious voice and your pearls of wisdom. There's no questions there, so I'm just going to read something. It's more of a comment, just a vote of confidence there from Christabel. Christabel says, I need to see more media agency representation on your council, Luzuko. Please, we're very much part of this industry as everyone else. Thank you very much, Luzuko. We're going to move on to our next speaker. Just a reminder to everybody, please, if you've got questions specifically for each speaker, please put them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the tab there. But we're going to come onto first we're going to run a poll, because we've been talking about Gen Z, we've been talking about youth leadership. We're just interested to find out, how do you identify? So are you with us today? Are you a Gen Xer? Are you a Gen Y, Gen Z, a baby boomer, or other? And maybe the other is some other way of pronunciation, way of identifying yourself using different pronouns, but that could be something else. But we're kind of just looking at your age demographics. So if you could just let us see who's in the audience, or what demographics are in the audience, that will be great. And then we're going to move on to our next speaker then.